Close to 2 billion rand invested in empowering and uplifting the poor. Tens of thousands of teachers, learners and communities benefiting from tried and tested development models. Kagiso Trust is one of South Africa's oldest non-profit organizations. Built on the values of integrity, accountability, passion for development and a hands-on bottom-up approach. With our team of committed, dedicated employees, leading trustees that guide us, and like-minded partners without whom we would not have achieved our potential, we are proud to celebrate our 30-year Pearl anniversary with you. 2015 will be a year of looking back at how far we have come, and a year of looking forward to the next 30 years of growth and impact. But first, let's go back to the start. In 1985, at the height of brutal apartheid, it was South Africa's church leaders that created the Kagiso Trust. The trust was formed to channel funds from the European Union for projects that would help young people, women, children and the disabled in poor marginalized communities in their struggle against apartheid. Our trustees guided us in fighting poverty and oppression through positive and peaceful development. Indeed, the name Kagiso means peace. Our first CEO began with staff of just 2 people. Ahmed Dango ran the difficult and sometimes clandestine operations for the first 6 years. Today, he's better known for his wonderful writing. During his time, the trust grew to an organization with more than 100 people in offices in 7 South African cities. Our founding trustees remain the moral center of our organizational approach and provide our strong ethics and integrity in ensuring all funding is properly directed. In the last years of apartheid, funds were also pledged from Japan and Scandinavia and entrusted to Kagiso Trust, who by now had a reputation for utmost integrity in distribution of funds. Up until 1994, over R1 billion was invested through the Kagiso Trust. It is fitting that we pay homage and respect to those nations that gave funds from their countries to make our country whole again. In 1994, when South Africa's first democratic elections were held, international funding was diverted and Kagiso Trust needed to change its funding model if it were to survive, from international to domestic sources. It was Eric Molobi, who had taken over as CEO in 1992, who conceived and pioneered a new sustainable funding approach for the trust. Eric was gutted about losing support for some of the projects which were doing meaningful work in the country, and this drove him to think innovatively about the future. Using R8 million from Kagiso Trust and a $5 million loan from JP Morgan, the newly formed Kagiso Trust Investments bought shares in various listed companies. The aim was to use dividends from these investments to continue to fund social development projects in future. It is through this model our key programs are still maintained, although we still rely on partnership funding to realize impact and scale. At the time, this long-term approach to funding the non-profit development sector work was a bold move. Despite the move to the new funding model, Kagiso Trust was forced to dramatically reduce its project portfolio from 1994. Operations were scaled down and the decision was taken to focus on rural development and particularly rural education initiatives. CEOs Horst Kleinschmidt and later Thabiso Ratsumo made the difficult and careful transition of winding down projects, consolidating and realigning the trust to the new funding paradigm. It was a time of change and a time of creating new relationships with other emerging non-profit organizations and their new government structures. At the start of the new millennium, our 5th CEO, Kagiso Skuman, took the reins and began to work extensively to transition the organization from funding conduit to a hands-on project and program-driven agency. The scope of development projects was expanded from the initial education focus to include small business development and capacity building programs for the country. It was under Kagiso's leadership that new key programs were introduced, each one starting small and being scaled later once the model and thinking was in place. The first initiative was launched in 2002 with the Kagiso Enterprises Rural Private Equity Fund and was followed in 2004 by the Beyers Naudé Schools Development Program. This remains one of our flagship projects today, with the aim of improving the quality of learning and teaching in marginalized schools. In 2006, the Eric Molobi Scholarship Program for Tertiary Engineering and Commerce students came into being, as we worked with bright learners whom without support would not have been able to continue their studies. In 2010, the Kagiso Trust Consultancy for Local Government Capacity Building Projects was conceived, followed in 2011 by the Kagiso Trust Leverage Fund for revitalizing of the NGO sector. Both programs are about enabling and supporting our partners for better delivery. In 2012, the Resilience Learners Network was introduced to encourage high school learners to not allow their challenges to define them, following grassroots findings that despite school interventions, outside challenges can often derail the path to education. It was also in 2012 when the Education Conversations began, a platform to encourage public discussion in identifying solutions to improve the education system, a conversation that will continue. Our most recent program was launched in 2013. Based on a partnership with the Shanduka Foundation in collaboration with the Free State Department of Education, the Free State Whole School Development Program has been developed under the joint venture Kagiso Shanduka Trust. Sustainable funding for Kagiso Trust's work also expanded over this time. In 2011, Kagiso Trust Investments entered into a merger with the TISO Group to form Kagiso TISO Holdings and acquired a 1.5% stake in FirstRand. The FirstRand investment will begin to pay dividends in 2016. In 2014, Kagiso Trust launched its own investment company, Kagiso Capital, which Khoso Skuman now runs as CEO. Along with our sustainable funding strategy, we have worked with many excellent corporate donors on a number of projects and programs and entered into matched funding models with government, creating unique public-private partnership models for development. It's 2015 and we are poised for the next 30 years. Kagiso Trust would not be where it is today without our relationships with people, our trustees, employees, stakeholders, partners, corporate donors and communities. We thank you all for your contributions and support. We know that the world is our oyster and have identified 4 key areas of focus for our future success. They are innovation, sustainability, collaboration and model development. Join us in our celebrations this year as we explore these concepts and share pearls of wisdom together.